All right, so Facebook to Google in less than 48 hours. How to win with Google in 2021. I'm Dan Wardrope, and I'm joined by Ian Henman. How you going, buddy?
Good.
Good. All right. So most of you probably know me by now. I run pay-per-lead agencies in the UK and North America. I've recently just exited my pay-per-lead business in Canada, believe it or not. So that was a nice one. And also have an education business called Flexxable, where we teach how to do pay-per-lead. But enough about me. Ian, tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So I've, when I was actually preparing these slides with you, I had to go back into when I started all this, and it was 2004 when I first started marketing online, and it was before WordPress, before Google, before a lot of stuff. And I was building sites with Google. Actually, no, Google had started because I was running AdSense revenue at that time. And that's kind of how I got started. And that moved into affiliate marketing.
Yep.
And learning SEO, a lot of black hat SEO. So I spent a lot of time in that up until 2012, when a lot of the black hat stuff got extremely difficult to do. And that's when I started consulting with local businesses and, kind of just sharing the knowledge I had. But then I quickly saw, being a performance marketer from the affiliate space, I saw the benefit to not necessarily working strictly on retainer, but selling leads, and in particular, phone calls is what we were doing. So I know you talk about the rank and rent method a lot.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we were doing before. It used to be Google Places. Now it's Google My Business.
Yeah.
We were leveraging that type of stuff and, driving calls through call tracking numbers. And then, in 2017, we kind of started driving more leads at scale, which is just making our transition into becoming 100% pay-per-lead agency, which is, when I met you. And, and here we are today. We run a 7-figure lead gen business in Canada, primarily in life insurance space, mainly.
Yep.
And most of that, as you'll see here, is now all coming off of Google, right? So that's me. So I've been around here for a while.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It's a very similar story to me, actually, except I typed in make money online, I remember, in September 2009. And it's been 11 years since then. And it was the same with me. I started with affiliate marketing. Wasn't very good at that. And then I went into SEO and then used the same kind of methods that you did and got smashed by Penguin. And and then quickly realized, okay, well, I've got all of these clients. I'm now not really getting them much results. So how about I try and sell them pay per click? And that's kind of how my journey started. So very similar.
Okay, cool.
Interesting. All right. So what are we going to cover today? So a bit about my personal journey with the different ad networks and how they're working with pay-per-lead, what's going on with Facebook, why it's a good time to diversify, an intro to Google Adwords, why Google is so much more than search paid ads, how to take your winning Facebook ads and get them going on YouTube, and how to take advantage of Google's newest placement, which is Google Discovery, which I can't believe no one is talking about, right?
I know. I'm very surprised by this.
Anyone talking about it. I don't know why, but I suspect after this webinar, it might start changing. All right. So my journey, you just touched on before, in the rank and rent model. Basically, this is, the way I kind of got started. I remember I bought a course or something and I think they were teaching to buy exact match domains for the type of keywords you wanted to rank for. And I went and bought like 50 or 60 of those domains for all of these cities all over the UK. And I never got around to building a site on all but about 3 of them. But it kind of worked, but it was at Google's mercy. And as I was saying before, I started with paid ads in circa 2015 because, as I was saying before, I wanted to speed things up. And I started on a retainer basis, doing AdWords search, and then landed some clients who basically I was just lucky. They said to me, Dan, like, all this retainer stuff and us having to pay you each month and the reports that you're doing and all of this crap that is taking up everyone's time. How about we just agree cost per lead, and then we'll just get started on that basis. I think it was in the debt consolidation niche, and I don't know, like it just kind of worked. When I look back on it, I was selling this concept fairly confidently, but I realized how little I knew back then. And it was, yeah, it kind of reminds me about how dangerous you can be when you don't really know what you're talking about. But it's also good because actually you can still sell really well because you know a lot more than what the average client does. It's really interesting. And for those of you who don't know what pay-per-lead is, it's a very simple business model. Okay, the difference between what you generate the lead for and what you sell them for is your gross profit margin from our agency. So let's say we sell leads for $100, we try and get them for 50 or less. And if we're selling 100 leads a week, that's 10 grand. We make 5 grand gross profit from that client, and then I pay my overheads and all of the usual business expenses out of that, out of the profit margin. And it's just a much easier model because you're able to, you know, use technology that's been developed recently to be able to, you know, build a brand like one of these rank and rent models that I was talking about and was talking about before. You can build a brand in a space and then drive traffic to a funnel and use technology and software to be able to distribute the leads to different buyers based on locations and criteria of the leads using survey funnels and things like that. It's certainly grown a lot, this industry, in the last few years. And then we started on Facebook around 2016, and wow, I mean, we were lucky because my agency was involved in what's known as the PPI scandal over here in the UK, which is when every basically consumer that took out a credit card was missold payment protection on their credit cards. And basically most people had a claim, and the average claim was about £3,000, I believe. And this was like the offer to end all offers because it was what we call money for jam. You basically send a lead to the claims management company. They were paying us £18 a lead. And it just worked for everyone. I think we were generating on average the leads for around 50%. And we were doing, you know, many thousand, we did many thousands of leads, hundreds of thousands of leads actually. So it really kind of kick-started my knowledge and my insight into this industry. And back then Facebook was making up 80% of the agency spend. This was, you know, yeah, 2016, 2017. And it was via an advertorial funnel, and it was very kind of clickbaity type stuff. I kind of hate that word clickbaity, but it was very much developing intrigue within your ads and then sending the clicks to an advertorial, which converted people from there to a landing page and became a lead. It was actually very easy once you got it dialed in. And in 2019, probably towards the end of it, we started experiencing some issues with accounts going down and BM bans. And I could see the writing on the wall, okay? And I said to the team, go make Google work. Let's see what we can do over in Google. And I was lucky to, at this point, have, you know, quite a good, you know, network of people. And I started selling the Flexxable program. And there was a lot of smart people in my group that I was able to kind of talk to and you know, get help from as well. You know, we're good at what we do, but I don't pretend for a second that I'm smarter than anyone else. But what I do enjoy doing is building relationships and talking to people and sharing the love. And that's, I guess, how I came across Ian. And now 80% of our spend in our agency at this point in time is from Google rather than Facebook. And that's why I think, and I didn't come up with this saying, I think it was my mentor when I was talking to him about this. He said, any business built on Facebook ads alone is a worthless business. All right, because it's just kind of like the Panda update of 2012 or whenever it was. It can be taken away from you very, very quickly. So you need to diversify, especially if you're just running Facebook ads by yourself. All right, so what are your options? My first bit of advice is to make sure you do not try and do everything at once. I mean, you guys have probably seen like TikTok ads, like being advertised, you know, newsfeed and free credit. And you might have heard about GDN. You might have heard about Yahoo Gemini, or you might have heard about Taboola, or all of these different ad networks. Okay, it's hard to do. It's kind of like moving into a new industry, right? It takes time to get dialed in. So don't try and do everything at once. If you're going to pick something, stick with it. Okay. Don't move on to the next until you've got it nailed. But the good news is it's getting easier, okay? you don't need to be a data scientist anymore because of all of this, the machine, the artificial intelligence, the algorithms are just making it less about having crazy campaign structures and, dialing everything into the, 99th percentile. It doesn't have to be like that anymore. The creative is what moves the needle every single time. And we're still seeing, our broad campaigns doing the best, right? Once you get it dialed in, you get enough conversions in their account, you just move to broad and the algorithms do the rest. And on all networks, the thing that, as I said, always moves the needle is the creative and knowing you or your client's offer. Okay. I remember, you always hear about people banging on about doing a customer avatar and an empathy map and understanding the offer, right? And it was one thing that I used to skip over. But the older and more experienced I get, the less I do that, okay? Because if you know the offer inside out better than the prospect that's clicking on your funnels and clicking on your ads, and you know their pain points, and you know what the benefits they're after and all that type of stuff, then it allows you to do really, really well, okay? So that's one of the big tips that I have moving forward. So here are your options. I touched on all these before. Taboola, Verizon Media, which is Yahoo, Gemini, LinkedIn, YouTube, GDN, search, Gmail ads, discovery. But Ian is going to focus on his Google system today. And why did I ask Ian to join? Well, this is, I think, one of the first times that, Ian, you've probably taught anything apart from consulting. Is that right?
Yeah. Other than no, definitely. I'm doing more and more consulting every week now. It seems people are finding me for that, but not on that scale, no.
Yeah. So Ian is probably one of the most active members in my group. And I think I said in the emails that I wrote for this webinar is that I'm doing my weekly calls, I'm speaking to people and they're like, Ian this, Ian that, Ian's helped me with this. And I'm like, bloody hell, who is this guy? What I'm meant to be the guru here, Ian. You're not meant to be the guy that's stealing all my thunder. You're the man, Ian's the man here. I've got to connect with this guy because, you're so helpful, you're so giving and sharing. And I guess for me, and on behalf of all of the people that you've helped in my program, I'd just like to publicly thank you for everything that you've done for us. And I feel privileged to have you here so you can help, share some of this knowledge, this amazing knowledge that you have.
Thank you.
All right, so over to you, mate. Just teach, let us know what to do. Tell me when you want to change the slides.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. And I'm looking forward to this too. It was very interesting to go through this process because when you've done this stuff as long as many of us have, so much stuff is second nature and you're not tuned into what that other people are like, whoa, what are you talking about here? Slow down, right? So it was a very interesting process to drill all this out into a format that I could explain to everyone here today and help people help people make the transition or at least diversify the way that I have. So I'll get right into it. So the reason that I've had to create this sort of system and move over to Google is because not by my choice. We're no longer on Facebook. We were, it was about back in August, give or take the beginning of August, I was on my phone, I'm working away, my phone dings, I look at my phone and it's a Facebook email, which used to always make me panicked, but this time it didn't because I'm used to it. An account had been disabled and I'm like, okay. So I got on Slack and I messaged one of our team members and I said, hey, can you get our appeal letter ready? The canned appeal letter we had on Google Drive, we're going to put that in. So I go into Facebook and I find out what account it is. And lo and behold, there's two red bars there actually. One red bar for our business manager, another red bar for my personal profile. So that was challenging. And I said, well, okay, not good. And then that team member I requested, she messaged me on Slack and says, I can't get into the business manager. I'm like, what? And she said, I can't. And so she tried to get into her personal Facebook profile and she'd been removed from the platform as her other admin. So we had to learn fast, right? And there's a whole background story to what happened then. And we're still off Facebook. And I've kind of decided, we tried a few things, which we won't discuss here on how to get back on, which most people probably have in their mind or have heard about, but we've decided to make Google our bread and butter now, as well as a little bit of native and things. We are still diversifying away because the worst number in business is one network, one traffic source, one ad, one client, one anything, right? So let's just talk a little bit about, so most people are aware of this, but Google has more inventory than any other network out there. Not only, I mean, sure, there's search, but, display is an ocean of traffic. Display meaning the banner ads you see basically on every website out there, as well as inside every app. YouTube's ad inventory is growing by the day. I think it's like 300 hours a minute it's growing by, theoretically, with the amount of content that's being uploaded there, right, every day.
Yeah.
And when you learn the Google platform, there are so many more levers you can pull beyond what Facebook allows you to work with. And we're talking about very few people I found in my consulting side of my business really get into the device targeting or really modifying demographic targeting on Facebook. But the stuff you can do on Google is just at next level, right?
Yep.
And this last point here is really, you don't want to be worrying about those emails anymore. I used to, I don't know if everybody still gets emails, we had about 60 Facebook ad accounts. So I was getting invoices every day. And the worst email I used to get was when I'd see, they were always, most of our accounts got billed at $1,108. I don't know why that, maybe that's everybody's billing threshold or something like that. Yeah. But when I got a bill for like $626, my throat would sink because I knew why I got that, right? The disabled email was coming. So that, you don't want to be worrying about that anymore. And with Google, yes, there's policies. Yes, there's things to follow. Yes, there's things we have to look at, but they don't have the AI bots running around disabling things left, right, and center, kind of like some sort of schizophrenic crazy thing, right? So So let's take a look at this. So what we're going to jump into here is I want to help you take your most successful campaign on Facebook right now, the ad, the creative, the copy, and we want to migrate that over to Google fast. And the way that we did it first was we went to YouTube. We'd already been doing a little bit of YouTube training. Dan had some good YouTube training, which we used. And then I really dove deep into learning more and more and more. And what we're talking about here is we're going to look at how we can take your best Facebook ad and move it over to YouTube pre-roll ads, so like the ads that play prior to the piece of content you're looking at on YouTube, as well as discovery ads. So discovery, as Dan mentioned earlier, is the newest placement. So to the right of this slide here, this is just the image that I grabbed off Google, but it explains where this placement shows up. So it's primarily a mobile placement, which is great. And it shows up on the homepage of the YouTube YouTube app. So if you look at the left-hand image there, those sneakers, that's the YouTube app on a mobile device, and that's a carousel type discovery ad. Then we have the discovery placement on Android phones and tablets. And then we have Gmail. So those are the three places that shows up. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we use search as well, but not the way you probably are used to it, because obviously CPCs are high in search. So let's start with YouTube.
All right. So quickly before you move on, do you think discovery is kind of like Google's answer to Facebook ads?
I think they are trying this a little bit, because when we look at these three placements they've chosen to use with the YouTube app, the Android device, and Gmail, one of the big benefits that Facebook has is it's a profile-based network, right? So they have, both Google and Facebook have a ton of data points on all their users. However, when you're on MSNBC, there's display ads on there, but the exact amount of data that they can gather on you and what ad they can show you is not as great as as good as, say, Facebook can target. When we look at these three placements, generally we're logged into our Gmail account when we're there, or whatever Google account we have, and the amount of data is a little greater. And these are all Google properties, which they 100% control, right? So we look at things like being able to target custom intent keywords and things. I think it is, Dan, it's definitely, they're looking at trying to, how can they combat that?
Yeah, nice. One thing quickly, guys, Q&A will be at the end. So just ask your questions away and we'll try and get through to them towards the end, but I'm just going to let Ian roll with it because I'm listening and I'm learning. All right, YouTube.
Okay, cool. So in my opinion, YouTube is the next best platform beyond Facebook from a creative standpoint. One of the things I really have appreciated about Facebook is the almost non-limitation to characters and creative of what we can do. Obviously, there's certain things we can and can't say, but if you want to write a 10-word ad or a 1,000-word ad, you can do that. Most other placements, like people trying to transition over to, say, Outbrain, Taboola, Gemini, we've got character limitations with headlines. We really don't have any descriptions, so we have to let the image do the selling, and oftentimes it's hard to qualify a click. On YouTube, we don't run into that in the same way because we have so much more flexibility to tell a story with the script and the video and the imagery that we use, right? So that was, at least for my reasoning, the biggest reason I wanted to look at Facebook next, because we had spent a bunch of money on native and we're getting some results, but the YouTube, just the opportunity just seems so much bigger, especially with the mass amount of inventory, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that targeting is pretty similar, plus some more options, right? So, I mean, when you first launch your new Facebook campaign, you're probably not running broad unless you've got a ton of pixel data. So you're looking at, you're using insights in the audience, inspection in the back end. You're trying to figure out what interests to target and things like this. And YouTube and all of Google kind of has that same thing with their in-market and affinity stock audiences that are available, right?
Yep.
And realistically, the campaigns that work on Facebook are very clonable over to YouTube. And it doesn't have to be like an extremely expensive and in-depth process. I think that keeps a lot of people away from going to YouTube is, well, like, I don't have a DSLR camera. I don't have I don't have the equipment to make videos. I don't, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And this last point here, Fiverr is your friend. It really is. I haven't even looked at how much money we spent on Fiverr in the last 6 months, but it's thousands of bucks for sure. But it's such an amazing tool. You guys must use Fiverr as well, Dan, a little bit.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I luckily have an in-house videographer that kind of looks after a lot of this stuff, but we still use it at times. And I think that's a really good point. And it's kind of like a little secret that we have inside the agencies that are running YouTube. People like me and you, we're kind of like, let's not tell too many people about it, because it's actually like sometimes the stock videos and all of the basic ones work better than these really kind of expensively made scripted videos. And that's the biggest reason why I think YouTube is so powerful. It's because, the barrier of entry to the layman is so much higher. Not any fool can write a script and put an ad up in YouTube, right? But any fool can bang up a pretty quick text ad with an image in Facebook. So I think it's in its infancy, if you ask me.
I think you're right. Yeah. And as both the ad networks are going to change, creative's going to change, and everything evolves. Like what we were doing 10 years ago isn't what we're doing today, obviously. Right.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
So let's take a quick example look here. So I wanted to utilize an example ad and everything that I felt was very realistic. It's one thing to be able to say, run, you were talking about the PPI type of leads you were running, or a national debt consolidation ad. I'm not saying that they're easier or harder, but I'm just saying most people who may be skeptical can more easily say, oh yeah, well, I can see how that can work, right? So what I did here was I chose, this is a very, very regional Facebook ad for a subprime auto finance dealer, which services 2 provinces in Canada, and not big ones, small ones. I'm in the East Coast of Canada. There's like 1 million people in my whole province, and the neighboring province to us also small. So what we did was this ad on the right here, adults who live in New Brunswick should check this out. The whole copy's not there, but you can kind of probably figure out what is down below. We're kind of picking on the COVID side of things where people couldn't go in and shop, but you could shop from their sofa. So we took this ad and we basically wrote about 120 word script, expanding on that concept, right? And send it over to Fiverr. We sent it over to 3 different people, 2 women and 1 man, to create the voiceover. I think we probably spent $100 in total to get those voiceovers done, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, we then took some stock footage from some places, which I'll talk about in a second here, to put a video together. And then we linked it basically to the exact same quiz that we were running off of Facebook. And we just used the pre-roll ads that we're going to look at here in a second to test it to some stock audiences in Google, and then in YouTube specifically. And then out of the gate, day one, we weren't 100% sure. Obviously, no one does anything with the expectation that it won't work. But we had a lead in an hour, and I was like, what? And this audience was not large, right? So jump to the next slide there, Dan. So on the right here, it's not the exact same thing, but you can see this is the first saved screenshot. It was a 40-second video, right? We used, on this particular one, all the stock video footage we got from was Envato Marketplace, which I think is like $50 a month, a subscription with unlimited. We also used storyblocks.com, another stock footage site. And we started assembling these in-house with just an app called ScreenFlow. I think we paid $60 for. And really what we would do is we'd send out our voiceover, like I was just said in the previous slide there. We get it back. We would search for, literally, 10 men and women with car keys, a provincial flag to kind of call people out at the beginning. So the video sort of starts with something like, New Brunswick residents without a car, check this out. And it's a New Brunswick flag. So quickly people are like, oh, wait, I don't have a car. I'm in New Brunswick. What's going on? Right.
Yeah.
And really that's all she wrote in that way. Right. So, here with that third bullet there. So create videos using software. ScreenFlow is one that we use, but something that, and it's another Flex member that turned me on to this, Dan, is Vidnami.
Yeah.
It's a very valuable piece of software. It's like $50 a month, I think, or $60 a month. It has access to some of these story blocks, which is in the first bullet there, their stock content that you can grab.
Yep.
And you copy and paste your script in here. It grabs some footage based on the words that are in there. Sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't, but you can easily change out what's in there. And that's it. And you can test 10 videos, if you can get your voiceovers back, you can test 10 different things inside of 5-6 hours and have them done and ready to launch to different stock audiences inside AdWords super fast, right?
Amazing.
I know. And this is the stuff that makes the difference, right? Now, once we figured out that angle worked, what the next thing we did was we said, okay, so the viewership on these stock videos is great, but I started doing some competitive research and looking at ads I saw, and I started to see not as many slideshow style ads. And we said, well, I think we want to maybe try and get some real humans in these videos, right? So that's when we started to try these spokesperson style ads, like you see on the right. Same offer, same concept, but now we're looking at, there's all kinds of people on Fiverr and Upwork that'll basically just record your script talking to a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
And you try out 4 or 5 different people, you put them all up there, you see what sticks. It's literally, that's it, in terms of that. Now your script obviously is, like you always say, Dan, creative makes the difference. So you can't just put any old thing up there. You've got, if you can't write good Facebook ads, you're not going to be able to write a good YouTube script, I guess is a pretty good rule of thumb. So understanding the basics of copy and your hooks and being able to spitball a bunch of ideas there is important, right? So in saying that, go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
So the process is pretty much voiceover and stock video to begin with, to test. And then once you have your winner, take variations of the winner and turn it into a spokesperson using the Fiverr actor. That's
what we're doing. Yeah. And because the turnaround time, I'm an impatient fella, right? And I find the turnaround time on the spokesperson style stuff to be longer, obviously, than than a stock like voiceover, right? So for that reason, we always start with that, right?
Cool. But and it's cheaper as well.
So it is cheaper, it especially where if you're on a budget and you're just trying to get this going, the average spokesperson video could cost you $100 to $300 depending on what you're looking at. Someone on a green screen that's dressed a certain way or something is going to be more expensive than a selfie style video.
Do you find selfies work better than a green screen?
It depends on the market. So in this auto finance market, at least in Canada, this is highly competitive. There's a few really large lead generators that are running that sell tens of thousands of leads each month. And we're selling a few hundred, but it's kind of the style that people are using now, right? So we're finding that this selfie style, it's almost positioning. We're not saying that they got approved, obviously. We're not suggesting they use the product or service, but there's an assumption here, I think, as we've got more of a homegrown type approach to it and using the right age demo. So I think if we were trying to sell in our life insurance market, we don't use selfie videos. I guess if that gives any explanation, the demo is different, right?
Exactly, a bit more professional.
Same with debt consolidation, mortgages, things like that. We're not necessarily putting someone in a suit, but we want, when we're selling our life insurance stuff, we've got a late 40s, early 50s individual, that's standing in front of a green screen or, a white background and then some overlay text, the same ways you see here, but that's the idea. Yeah.
And I won't interrupt again, but do you send this to the client for approval, all of these scripts, or are you just given free rein?
Most of our stuff, we have reasonable free rein, but I know the markets really well. So in life insurance, we have some stipulations we have to work over, obviously, or like there's policies and compliance and things like that we have to be careful of. In Canada, unless you're a licensed entity, you definitely can't do any giving any advice or things like this. So we're really focusing on the emotional pull. So very, very rarely are we putting, how much insurance you need or anything like this. We're really focusing on, if you don't have it yet, here's why you need it. So, like on Facebook, one of our best ads was actually an ambulance on that we ran. It was just to create this shocker. It was like, no one knows when they need life insurance, and when they do, it's too late, obviously. But I mean, the response we had on that was amazing. And at no point did we even talk about how much you need, how much it costs, or anything, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, cool. All right. Next one, or
so, yeah. Well, I'll just quickly touch on this. This is a really good hack to look at when you're trying to get something to work, because often, the beginning and the end are the most important points, right? So the intro, the first 8 or 10 seconds, then your close, and you're asking them to click your quiz or whatever. But a really good tip that I found with voiceover, at least, and we've got some good relationships on Fiverr with people, is if you get them to do another 3 or 4 intros, you can easily change out that first 8 or 10 seconds of your video. And you might find that a loser can become a winner just with a different intro, right? So yeah, that can be a good quick win, right? And also,
yeah, so we, like our script that we write, we just have 4 or 5 different openings, and they just read them one after another and then go into the body of the script, and then we just cut them into the video. Very easy to
yeah,
do.
exactly. Yeah. And it's like, on our end, we do use a lot of help, but I literally still open GarageBand sometimes on my Mac, and I'm slicing it up and exporting it. So, and the last tip here as we move into this is you do always want to be having new ads in development, right? You don't want to wait when things are going great. That's when you want to be investing your time into finding the next winner, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's hit the next one. Okay. So, the big question here after how do I create a video that we always get from people is like, how do I know who to target, right? Because when you get in, if you've been into AdWords and you look at these stock audiences, there's just dozens and dozens of them, right? And there's custom audiences, but I mean, what people, and I'm surprised at how many people don't actually know it, but where we've gotten so much into using landing page builders on Bounce, Webflow, ClickFunnels, all these different ones, most of us, not most of us, but a good chunk of us have forgotten about Google Analytics altogether, right? We're just focusing on these stats inside our ad network and maybe inside our page builder. But Google Analytics, when you install it properly, there's a little checkbox you can click under the admin to give you access to audience and demographic information for your traffic. And this isn't just from Google traffic. So if you're spending $1,000 a day on Facebook and driving, 800 or 1,500 or however many people to a page, you can collect the audience data on them based on who they fit and what audiences they fall into in Google, right inside Google Analytics. So, pardon me, something that I suggest everyone I consult with to do is if you don't have Google Analytics on your site, get it on it now. Turn on the audience and demo info. You can, I didn't put a tutorial in here, obviously, because it would be complicated, but there's lots of stuff on YouTube to find out how to do this. And you can see right away what stock audiences, in-market audiences and affinity audiences that are inside Google your traffic's currently attached to, and it jumpstarts things so fast. It saves you spending $500, $600, $700 on testing different audiences out of the gate, because oh look, here's the top 5 audiences that my traffic already belongs to. Let's start with those, right?
Yep.
And then it's something that, there you go. Actually, jump right ahead there. So this is an example. These are screenshots out of one of our GA accounts, Google Analytics, and you can see on the top left here, these are affinity audiences. So the avid news readers, I find this audience works really, really well for almost all broad offers. That's at the top. The 30-minute chefs, I'll be honest, it seems like everybody's in that these days. So I'm not, we don't use that a lot, but sports fans has worked really well in life insurance, business professionals as well. And you can see, and on the right here, we've got the in-market audiences. So these audiences are made up of it's what Google knows about people, right? Like, what have you been searching for the last 30 days? You got to think Google Analytics is on, I don't know, let's say 90% of sites. So they can tell what's happening here around the web. So if you're shopping for a new roof, for instance, and you've searched it in Google 3 times, reviews, you've been to a few contractor sites, you're watching videos, they can feel pretty confident that you're in market for a roof. Or at the very worst, you're kind of starting to think that you want to start a roofing company, but chances are you're looking for a roof, right? So
yeah, exactly.
this is big thing. Everybody go do this now. If you don't have it, well, not now, when we're done this webinar, but after that, go get GA on your site and turn that on. It takes about 2 or 3 days for the data to populate, but once it's there, it's a real great insight into what's happening. So
can I ask a quick question? So we do this as well, obviously, and we sometimes find that when you set up a campaign in YouTube, we'll set them up in one campaign, and then we might have 5 or 6 different, when we're starting out, 5 or 6 different audiences that we're going after, like a few affinities, a few in market, and then we'll put a broad in there. How do you deal with the fact that most of the time the spend is going to go to the broad audience? Or do you not even have broad in there to begin with?
I won't put broad in the same campaign as other audiences. And the reason is what you just hit, Dan. It's gonna suck your spend no matter what. It's like in Facebook, if you put a winning ad when you want to test new creative and you put a winning ad in the same ad set with new ads, you're not giving the new ads any chance, right? So I'll only test broad on its own, and I'll, in YouTube, I'll segment it out by age brackets, the preset age brackets, and run it that way.
Yeah, and you don't sort it out in age brackets for these when you're first starting for these kind of interest level ones. You just have
I'll know my demo data. So like if like you mentioned, if you've done your empathy map and your research, you know your market, you know who your ideal prospect is and your clients, or if it's your business, you know who it is. So I'll narrow my age brackets usually if I can. In Canada and the US, you can't in credit, home, and employment offers anymore, similar to Facebook. You have to leave it broad. But if I can, I narrow it. But I'll have, say, 5 ad groups. Each ad group will be testing a specific audience. The only time I'll overlap audiences is if I'm in a really, really tight geo, and we're trying not to do that anymore, but we are in some of them with life insurance in smaller cities and provinces. But generally, we'll try and make ad groups one individual audience rather than overlapping them, because the same thing happens. One audience pulls the spend and the other one's not getting a fair shake, right?
Interesting, because they don't have the equivalent of in Facebook where you can evenly allocate the spend between different ad groups, do they?
Not really, no. Not in the same way.
That's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wish they did do that. Anyway, all right, I'm interrupting.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, and this is exactly what we were talking about. So that would be an example set up there on the right. We're testing 5 ad groups, right? But this is exactly what you just said. Look at the top one, right? So that avid news readers is running 76 conversions for that time frame, and those other 4 none. I just, the way I took the snapshot, and you look at the average CPA at the bottom of 25-22. So that tells me, without looking at that, obviously the other 4 ad groups weren't getting a bunch of spend allocated, right? So it tends to do the same thing, right? But where the goal of this is to find one winner, right? So if we're targeting 3 to 5 audiences at the start, right, to try and figure out what audience is going to work, it's a pretty good rule of thumb to use, in my opinion, a 10x your ideal CPA to give enough budget. I know that's not always doable for everyone. So if you can't, I'm not saying that you can't test it, but it's going to take longer. Machine learning requires an amount of spend, obviously, an amount of information to figure things out. One thing that people sometimes get confused about is they think that these ad networks should just know what they need right away, right? They should be able to put a number in. It's like a lottery machine, and it just spits out conversions at what they want, right? It just won't work like that, as smart as these networks are, right? Something that I know you always teach, and it's very important, is you always want to be optimizing for conversions, at least in this style of campaign we're doing with YouTube getting started. And if it's a new account that you're just getting started with, I would say max conversions is usually what I recommend. You can do target cost per acquisition, which is you're setting a bid for how much you're trying to acquire your leads for, your conversions. But realistically, you're probably going to want to bid higher than you think. So I'll usually go sometimes as much as 30 to 50% higher than what we want it for at the beginning, because what happens is if you get too greedy, your campaign just stalls because it doesn't even know what to do, right? Because it has no ideas.
Exactly, out of the gate.
Have you guys found that too?
Yeah, that's exactly the same as us. The other question I have is, so there's other 4 audiences that aren't spending. Do you rule them out, or do you test them again? Because you just immediately go straight into like digging deeper into avid newsreaders, or what's the deal there?
So in this particular situation, I forget where I took this exact screenshot from. What we would probably be looking to do here is we would say, okay, avid newsreaders is a winner. We would probably launch a new campaign just to avid newsreaders and break out the age bands like we're talking about, and let that run solo, and then retest these 4 and add another one in as a sandbox campaign, looking for the next winner. And then we're going to look to scale that avid newsreaders up to a point where as much budget as we can, where our CPA doesn't suffer. And then just watch the frequency and watch our CPA and see how much mileage we can get out of it.
Yeah. It's pretty logical, really, isn't it, when you think about it?
It really is. I mean, it's while there are some intricacies with YouTube we need to understand, the concept of media buying almost holds true right across the landscape of all these networks we can use, right? And these practices are very transferable and universal.
Yeah, cool. All right.
So I want to put a caveat here for anyone who rushes off to try and start a campaign today. When you launch max conversions on a new campaign, especially a new account, it's going to overspend. And I mean, like, not $10. It could spend up to 2 to 2.5x your budget for the day for maybe 1 or 2 days. This is the campaign trying to understand, what are you telling me to do, right? It's like, you're saying, okay, I want these leads and I want these debt consolidation, mortgage refinance leads, and here's my funnel. But while they know where all the tags are and everything, they don't really understand how a human is going to interact with this. So they have to go spend a bunch of money in all the places that you've told it to try and figure stuff out, right? What type of people will convert on this? What type of ad inventory will convert on this? What type of everything will work on this, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to freak out on it. It levels out, and Google will tell you, your rep, as well as their support documents and things, will say that it will level out over the month. But those first couple of days, you need to kind of just sit on your hands, right? And as I mentioned before, TCPA, the second bullet here, can stall the campaign if you bid too little, right? TCPA, I see somebody just asked a question. I want to answer this. I keep saying it. TCPA stands for target cost per acquisition. So you're basically, when you're inside your AdWords account, you're able to, when you bid for maximum conversions, this is how you would actually be setting up. In YouTube, you've got the option of manual bidding. So you say, I want to bid per view, right? Or I want to let you manage my budget, which would kind of be like automated bidding in Facebook, just maximizing your bidding for conversions. Same thing in YouTube, you're maxing out, just use my budget to go get conversions, right? TCPA is when we want to try and tell it to say, well, I want you to go get conversions, but I don't want you to go crazy. I want you to try and get them within this amount, right? Now, last bullet here. So Google takes longer to level out, right? And you need aggressive patience. And I see we bolded and underlined aggressive patience, because I've done it. We've probably all done it. We start pausing and changing and tweaking and screwing with the stuff like 6 hours later. You know what I mean? And it's too soon, right? You got to give this at the very least a couple of days when you launch a campaign to just let it level out and start to see where things lie. And if you got to put that on a sticky note on your monitor or wherever, it's important. But if you change things too often, you're going to find yourself frustrated, and you're going to take yourself a lot longer to find successful results.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Metrics to shoot for. Interesting.
Yeah. So take these as, this is what we try and shoot for. I'm not saying that this is a very gray area. It's not black and white. So if you've got a 1% CTR off a YouTube campaign and it's not working, then there's something drastically wrong. You're either like, your messaging is completely off. But if you get a 1% CTR off YouTube, then you should be doing super fantastic with everything. A view rate of 25% plus, also same thing. That tells me that your match between your audience and your creative is very good. What do you guys find, Dan? Do you have a number you guys shoot for internally, or?
Yeah, around 1%. Anything above that is pretty good. A lot of the times we're not above it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I would agree with that. And view rate 25% as well. Exactly the same.
Yeah, cool. And I'm definitely not suggesting that we hit 1% all the time, but that's our gold standard, right?
Yeah. View rate's obviously it depends on the length of the video as well. I don't know if you talk about that in these slides, but what video length are we looking at here?
Most of our stuff, we're usually looking at anywhere from about 45 seconds to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Anything, if you get into we use some longer creative, but we use it in our retargeting sequences.
Yeah.
Not on the front end on cold traffic.
Yeah. That's another thing we're finding with YouTube. In Facebook, we didn't get a lot of love with retargeting. I don't know why that is over the years. Most of our offers were converted with cold traffic, but it seems that retargeting works better here than it does in Facebook. I don't know whether you've experienced that or whether I'm just making it up.
No, I think you're right. I think there's two pieces of that. I think Facebook makes most of us lazy because it's very easy. So I think we don't put as much effort. And I'm not suggesting that your team didn't, but I know we never put the effort into creating a really functional retargeting campaign on Facebook with new creative, new lander, new offer, not a new offer, but new angle or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you, on YouTube, we do, because obviously you're putting that effort into creating the video in the first place. So what we tend to do is create a whole nother piece of content. And I'll get into retargeting in a couple of slides, but really quickly, what we'll do is we'll retarget video views and page views separately. And I'll explain a little bit of how we do that. So the other point, just before we skip here, so we set up what we call micro conversions throughout our funnel. We set them up as conversions in Google AdWords. We're doing a lot of quiz funnels. So we put a event that fires after they answer the first question. If it's an advertorial, we fire when they click through from that, or when they view the different points, that we can not just base it off of click-through rate and view, but we can then say, okay, how far are they making it in the funnel? And this is obviously more important when we're not seeing conversions, right? So we can try and diagnose the issue. Is it on YouTube or is it post-click, right?
Yeah. That's right. I think you did a nice little video on that inside our group the other day.
Yeah, just to try and explain, because what was happening was I was talking to a lot of people doing coaching calls or consulting calls with them, and I'd say, well, what's happening here? And they're like, I don't know. Well, what happens after this? I don't know. I'm like, well, then we can't answer your question because we don't have enough information yet, right? And I think that's a huge takeaway for people is the more you know, the better decisions you can make, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. The next one there. Yeah. So a few optimization tips once you're launched here. So our process so far is, we're going to create our video off of what's working well on Facebook. We're going to take our copy. We're going to create a script. We're going to make a stock video type creative. Then we're going to go find our 3 or 5 audiences to test. We're going to create a campaign. We're going to throw those videos in there. We're going to drive to the same or similar lander we were running on Facebook. And then we're going to let that run for 2, 3, 4 days. And then what's going to happen is we're going to come in and we're going to say, okay, let's optimize what we've got and get it working better, right? So a few things we want to look at first, obviously, is, we're going to take, I don't have a screenshot here, but you definitely want to look at the placements. So you've got, if you've got, say, $300-500 on a YouTube campaign, it's not going to take very long to build up 20, 30,000 videos that your placements that your creative is being shown on, right?
Yeah.
So you want to go in there, and we usually will trim out sometimes 25 or even 50% of our placements. And we basically just look at what videos are getting views but no click through, or what placements are not getting any views but impressions. And we just want to clear out all the stuff that's sucking up spend and bring in new blood to see what's going to work, and also push more of our budget to what's working. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we usually will go in, we'll look at what devices are working in terms of you're targeting desktop, laptop, mobile, tablet, and also TV placements is available on YouTube. So we generally block TV for all of our lead gen campaigns because they're not going to click on the ad. Some people could do this for brand awareness and maybe they'll get some search traffic out of it. But we generally do that. We will adjust our age targeting, age and gender, look at what ages are doing better. Sometimes we may block certain ages, or we may just market to men or just market to women. A really good tip that some people forget is we want to block most of our kids channel placements. I know there's tons of lists out there you can grab, but you don't want to be showing to, depending on what country you're in, like, anybody watching Disney shows or something like that, or whatever, or, how to count, how to learn. A lot of kids, toddlers or whatever, their parents got them on their phone or their tablet, and no sense wasting spend on a 4-year-old, right? So, And then the other thing that often people will overlook, especially if you're running a really big geographical campaign, national or a state, province, whatever it might be, is you can actually bid adjust particular cities or even down to the postcode or zip code. So in certain areas, like in some of our markets, especially in life insurance, we find rural areas produce lower cost leads than urban areas. So what we found to be successful is we actually go into some of the larger urban centers and we reduce our bid by as much as 50% on those urban centers to allow more spend to go to the rural areas. And then when we do bid on the urban center, we're not willing to spend as much at the auction. So our leads generally come in at a lower price. It's a little bit of a higher level tactic that I don't find a lot of people do, but this is something you can't do in Facebook for sure. And it can take a loser and make it a winner, because when you start to go in and look at the geographical locations in Canada, for instance, Toronto might take all our spend, but we may not get any leads there. So why go, right?
Can I ask if you're doing this within the live campaigns or it's done in a new campaign after?
Yeah, so this would be something that we're usually doing upfront when we're testing out new audiences. So if we're trying to make a campaign work and it looks like, we're getting leads, but maybe they're out of KPI, but we're like, we must be able to get these into KPI with a few of these kind of tests, right?
Yeah.
That's usually where we're doing them. And it offers, it's more of something that you want to do usually when you're running on max conversions, because it's going to, the TCPA setting, when you start adjusting it, right. But with max conversions, I find we'll do it usually in a testing campaign. And then when we roll something out to scale, we usually just want to we already know how we want it set. Ideally, if you have to start messing with a production campaign, then it may not be working anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. We tend to try and steer clear of it. And the other thing that, I don't know whether you've touched on this as well, is that it's incredibly consistent. YouTube.
Yes.
Okay. Once you get it dialed in, it seems to run for a lot longer and a lot more stable than on Facebook.
Yeah, I found we can get 2 or 3 months sometimes out of a campaign on YouTube, where we used to get 2 weeks out of a campaign, if that, on Facebook. Even
one creative can last for a lot longer too.
Yeah, and I've actually found to have, once you get your right creative in, we'll usually just run one solo creative sometimes in a campaign that's working, and then testing new stuff in a sandbox.
Yeah. All right, quick start
list. All right, so quick list on YouTube. So obviously I kind of just touched on this again, but we want to take our best Facebook hook. We want to create 2 versions of our script, aim for, somewhere between 100 and 200 words. Anything over 1.5 minutes usually, or 2 minutes, is probably going to be too long, in my opinion, in our experience. At the beginning of your script, a really good tip is to ensure you call out your prospect first. So in our auto example, we were saying, hey, NB residents, hey, New Brunswick residents who don't have a car. It might be like Canadian residents without life insurance, or it might be like, have you experienced this, or whatever you can actually call them out for, to make sure that they know that this video is for them. We always get at least 2 voiceovers done. We go 1 man, 1 woman usually. And then in terms of creating that video, there's Vidnomi we talked about. You could do it yourself if you want to get your hands dirty, but there's also lots of people on Upwork or Fiverr that can also create these stock videos for you, and build 2 and launch it, right? That's it. And then sit on your hands for a couple of days while it gathers data.
Cool. And can I just, because I haven't looked at these slides in great detail, how long do you think we've got to go? Because I've got to actually go to London in about 45 minutes. So I just want to make sure we're on track, right?
Yeah, no, I think we can get it. I'll try and I talk a lot, so I'll try and stick to the points.
No. It's all very interesting stuff. I'm just aware. I've got 50 minutes before I need to leave, but I think...
No, we're good. We're going to make it through, man. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So let's talk about discovery. So you touched on this. Not a lot of people are talking about this. It's the newest placement available. It's on the YouTube app home screen. It's in Gmail and on Android devices. Anybody who's got a Google Pixel or any other Android device, the discovery is when you kind of swipe left or when you're on the home screen of Chrome. It's in some ways, like you touched on, Dan, it's similar to Facebook. It doesn't have as many placements. So one of the things with YouTube or Google Display or other ad networks, what you're going to run into is you are going to have so many placements you have to optimize around. With Discovery, you don't. So you just got YouTube placement, you've got the Gmail placement, and then the Android device, right? It's image-based ads, headline and description. You've got a 40-character limit with the headlines, which on the right there would be the 100% approval car loans for Maritimers. And then
Yep.
the description underneath is up to 90 characters, but it doesn't always show, right? With these, this is a carousel ad on the right, you see. You also have the option of doing one single image ad. So comparable to a carousel ad on Facebook or just a static image ad.
Yep.
And like I say here at the bottom, the sort of a pro of discovery is that there's only 3 placements to manage. So you're not cutting out those bad placements like we do in YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting discovery. A little success story. I put one of my students onto it. I don't know whether you've spoken to him. His name's Esh, and he's in one of the.
I talked to him last Friday about this. Actually, he was asking me
something
on it.
So he's got his discovery campaign down to £7 per lead.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is way cheaper than Facebook, and at scale. And the clients are, like, they're falling over themselves to buy these leads at the moment because everyone's accounts are being banned left, right, and center.
Nice.
They're created WhatsApp groups, like they're just the best thing since sliced bread, and it's all down to discovery. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's policies to follow, but I find that a lot of the stuff that would just get you slammed on Facebook isn't happening on discovery with basically the same copy, right? So
I wonder if it's going to change. What are your thoughts?
I think that everything is going to change in that, like, next year, and everything's going to be about the same as this year. Things are always going to change. It's the industry, right? So I think it's totally going to come down to how the platform is used, and Google definitely polices discovery more so than anything else. And I think it's because of where it's showing up. So I think we've got another several months, because it's not overly used yet, of quick approvals and things like this. I would say within a year, we probably start to see a little more restriction placed on it. They may have more of their ad team reviewing things, but right now I can see review process is longer. So they're definitely getting probably manual reviews, not bot reviews. And, I think as long as you follow their policies, things should be good for the next little bit. Yeah.
And I'd just like to touch on something you said there, like things always change, right? I've been in this game, not as long as you, right? But this kind of thing happens every year, right? Every year. There's always something going wrong that people are falling over themselves about, complaining about. It's doom and gloom. It's the end of the world. There's always another way, right? We're creative folk, we're entrepreneurs, and this is what we're here for, right? It makes us get better. It's part of the growing process. So I actually look forward to challenges like this, because it means I get to host a webinar like this with you and learn something. So it's just, guys, if you're listening to this and you're freaking out about Facebook, just don't look at it that way. Look at it as an opportunity, because it is an opportunity. Okay.
Yes. Every time we make one of these changes, we become better, and we increase our value. We increase our opportunities for longevity in the market. And we do need to learn to roll with it, because winters come all the time, right? Yeah. Well, literally with predictability, right? So, all right. So discovery, let's jump back in. So it's pretty much the same targeting, not pretty much, it's the exact same targeting style as we get with YouTube. We're targeting audiences, whether it be stock audiences in market and affinity, or custom audiences. Just one point, I didn't have it in the slides, but if anyone's listening to this that does run YouTube now, obviously on YouTube, there are other targeting methods besides audiences. You can do placement, channel, things like this. We found that for scale, the audience style works the best, because in a lot of the B2C markets we're in, especially that are the traditional lead gen ones, there isn't a bunch of people that are posting videos we can target. Like no one goes to YouTube looking to listen to videos about mortgage refi, really. You know what I mean? Exactly. So we found the audience targeting to be more superior than targeting specific placements, right? So sorry, go ahead.
Or keywords, right?
Yeah, or keywords. Yeah, I haven't had a ton of success with keywords in the lead gen space. I have had it, we get success if my wife has an e-com business, and we've tested some stuff there and we have success because her market is on there, but not in lead gen as well. No, that's right. Okay, cool. So bidding here, second bullet point, is the same. We're looking at max conversions or target cost per acquisition. Same rules apply. I recommend either starting at a high TCPA campaign or running max conversions to see how many leads you're going to get in at what sort of price point. Our rule is always usually if we start at max conversions, Google says if you get 50 plus conversions in 30 days, look at the average cost per acquisition, the average lead value, and then look at switching over to TCPA after that point and bid a couple dollars higher than what your average conversion was for the last 30 days. That is usually the rule of thumb we follow. Start at max conversions, let it run for a month, see how it levels out. And then if we launch a new campaign, we'll know what our CPA should be, or we convert that campaign to TCPA.
Yep.
We've got 3 different image sizes on the right there. That's sort of like a portrait style for a phone. So you've got a square, a rectangle, and then a vertical rectangle or portrait size image you have to put in there. Then we've got 5 headline options and 5 description options. And we are limited by characters, but 40 characters is a lot better than, say, the space you get in YouTube to post, which is, I think, is it 15, Dan? I'm forgetting right now, but I think super small. 15 characters, I think, in YouTube, right? Yeah. And then they've got some buttons there predefined, like learn more, get a quote, apply now, that you can put below that.
It's kind of like a dynamic ad in Facebook, isn't it? Where you get
it's very much like a dynamic ad in Facebook or a responsive ad in Google Display Network. They've got a preset amount of space, so they have to limit that those characters for you so that if any ad fits in that placement.
Yeah, one thing that we've learned over the years is that it's when we're starting with Facebook, if you try and go 5 very different hooks and 5 very different images and 5 very different headlines, then that can sometimes hurt you, because some of those images or headlines aren't necessarily associated with leads, but they're associated with clicks. So does that make sense? So
yes,
sometimes it's better to test separately, figure out what's you have to put 5 in, don't you? Or can you put 1 in? You can only put 1 in.
No, you can put 1 in, and that's something that we've done. I posted a video, I think, a couple of weeks ago in the mastermind about how we were testing out 100 different ads on Display Network. Yeah. And we were doing something similar with Discovery as well, creating actually a Discovery ad with just 1 headline, 1 description, 1 image, but doing that multiple times. The drawback is the review time in Discovery is a little bit longer, but you don't have to use all the places. No.
That's interesting, because we found sometimes, especially in Facebook, we only really move to dynamic when we've got stuff dialed in and we make small variations and we know what's working, rather than big variations. Otherwise, it'll suck up the spend to stuff that doesn't convert.
Yep. And I do find sometimes too many changes you can confuse it, and then the campaign pauses for a bit, right? Almost like not physically pauses, but you're like, why is it stalled today? So yeah. All right, let's hit the next one.
All right, next one.
Yeah. Okay. So how we use Discovery is pretty much bang on the same way we're using YouTube. We're going direct to a quiz or a lead capture, or we're going to an advertorial, which then goes to a quiz. We test both, and we have both working successfully within an acceptable KPI, right? Yeah. Our best images that we used on Facebook generally perform well on Discovery. However, we have found that sometimes when you crop the images, because there's the portrait, there's the rectangle, and there's the square, if the whole image gets cut off a little bit, they disapprove the image. They don't want it. They don't want a sort of a messy looking image to appear on those placements, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then I do say here, test 5 very different headlines. And I know what you're saying. We do test 5 different headlines, all to the same extent, but we don't. Some people will, I find, just kind of change 1 or 2 words for their headlines. We make sure we're using different verbiage for each. In this example, we might have 100% approval car loans for Maritimers. Yeah. Another one might be like 60-second pre-approval quiz, take it now. Yeah. Another one might be like New Brunswick adults without a car, check this out. They're all leading to the same thing, but we want to be able to say, oh yeah, that messaging worked versus the other one, if that makes sense, right?
I found with our Discovery campaigns that it's hard to, there's not much data that you can dig into on the creative side, is there?
No, there isn't. And that's another reason. So when you actually look at the data on Discovery, it'll tell you, it gives you like a poor, good, and best rating, right? Which is super ambiguous. So what we tend to do is we will let a ad with 5 images, 5 descriptions, 5 headlines run. And then we'll look at what ones say they're the best rated. And then we'll break that out into a new one with 4 more images similar to the one that was the best. And then maybe slightly variations on the best headline and the best description. And then we'll go back to the drawing board with another new ad with 5 different headlines and 5 different descriptions. But we'll do that in a whole nother campaign, or usually another campaign, and treat that as sort of a sandbox. Because when you got a winner, something that you have to be super careful of, and this is on every platform, is don't get stuck in testing mode. and never scale, you know? So if you find something that wins, step on the gas and push it and let it go. Don't be like, oh, maybe I can beat it. No, put it in its own thing and let it operate at its optimum performance, right? And then test somewhere else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Next one.
So yeah.
Next one. Okay. Targeting.
So our targeting strategy for discovery is pretty much the same. You know, we'll usually, when we find stock audiences that work on YouTube, or if we're testing 5 particular stock audiences on YouTube, we do the exact same thing over on discovery. We'll test, say, the 5 audiences in both places with similar ads, right? But another thing that we've done really well is we're leveraging discovery for retargeting. And what we do 2 different ways. So we'll, inside YouTube, or pardon me, in Google, what you're able to do is when you connect your YouTube channel to your Google Ads account, is you can start to build audiences of video views of who watches either particular videos or any video as an ad, or there's a whole bunch of combinations you can set up.
Yeah.
If they only watched the video but didn't click the ad, then we can assume that we can run them probably to the same lander with a slightly different video, or a slightly different ad over on discovery, because they haven't seen the lander yet.
Yes.
And this is what I mean, where people sometimes get lazy on Facebook for retargeting.
Yes.
They're trying to run to the same lander, but they already saw that lander, right? So like if they didn't convert the first time, yeah, there's a few that maybe just didn't have time or whatever, but it didn't resonate with them enough for them to take action, right?
Exactly.
So what we'll do is we'll retarget video views with a different ad to the same lander. We do the same thing on YouTube. We'll go to the same lander, but a different video. And then we'll retarget page views. If the original ad was going to a quiz, then we'll retarget them with an advertorial, right? Or vice versa. If it was an advertorial, we might retarget them to a quiz or a different advertorial. But we make sure that if they viewed the page, we don't show them the same page again, if that makes sense. So
it's I don't know whether you find a way around this, but from memory, you can't advertise to people that seem like 75% plus of a video on YouTube, can you?
Not the same way that you can on Facebook when you've got video views to be like 25, 50, 75%. No, but I've found that video view retargeting is extremely lucrative for us. Yeah.
Yes. I agree. All right. Optimizing.
Yeah, so optimizing our discovery campaigns once we've got them going is it very much mirrors YouTube. So we're looking at what audiences and demographics are working. We don't do anything with placements because we can't, but we'll exclude a certain demo or age if it's not working within our cost per acquisition. And then we'll shut off audiences that aren't working. Our goal, of course, is to find those 1 or 2 audiences that we can scale, right? And really push the budget into. We'll look at our creative elements like we discussed on the previous slide and look at what headlines, what images, and things like that are working. And we'll usually break those out into a successful, sort of a winning ad, we'll call it, with the winning elements. And then we'll continue to test in another area, right? Same as YouTube, we'll watch our location report and see if we can exclude or modify certain things to stop spend from going to places that just doesn't seem to be converting. And in terms of click-through rate, we're looking at 3% or better off of discovery in many places, right? And that seems to be our sort of standard. We've got some that are way off the map there too, but I've found anything under about 1.5, we've got a problem. And that's usually, it's either the audience or the creative, one or the other, and you can usually determine which one it is. But because it's only in a couple of places, there's no placements to adjust. They actually don't even give you data on placements for discovery. You can't look at what's coming from YouTube versus what's coming from, you know, but I'm okay with that because that's one less thing we have to worry about. So
it's in its infancy, really, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it's not that old at all. It's only just now I'm starting to see, you know, other people start to blog about it, right? So
exactly.
Yeah.
Quick start list for discovery.
So what we're looking at here is, again, same idea. We're taking our best Facebook ads and converting them over, most times with the same images. We use Canva to convert them into the 3 different sizes really quickly, creating our 5 headlines and 5 descriptions and getting them up there fast, right? We found that you can use the exact same lander as we've used on Facebook, and it worked usually right out of the gate. If it didn't, it was usually a mismatch with targeting the audiences, right? Back to previous slides when we talked about using Google Analytics and things like that to figure out what audiences are working. We'll usually test the same 5 audiences in discovery as we do on YouTube. And then we'll sort of watch after 5 to 7 days about what creative's working the best, one note on the creative is it takes a few days for the discovery creative to show you what's best. Most of them will say pending for the first 3 or 4 days, unless you're getting hundreds of clicks a day on your ad, in my experience.
Yeah.
And then once we figure out the pieces of that creative that show they were the best, we'll break that off into an ad on its own, usually add in a couple similar images. So if it was a woman holding a key in her mid-30s, it looks like, we'll go find a few more of those and throw them in there. Same thing with the headline and the description. And we'll kind of set that as our control and try and beat the best image, headline, and description from the original ad.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
GDN.
All right. So yeah, GDN. This is one that people, GDN is such an interesting beast because it's just an ocean of traffic. There's so many websites out there, and there's so many interesting ways to use this. So it's websites for banner display ads and apps, and it's on your Android and iOS devices. You can literally lose your shirt fast. Like, I've definitely seen a GDN campaign spend $500 in an hour after it got turned on because I made a stupid mistake. Right.
Yeah.
That stupid mistake is usually I forgot to turn off mobile apps.
Yeah.
And but even then it's challenging to run as a cold traffic source. So 90% of our use of GDN right now is for retargeting, and we're doing it to a different lander. So an example ad here on the right here, Saskatchewan homeowners. This is for an HVAC rental company. It's in several locations across Canada, and we're running this on YouTube. We're running this on Discovery, but then what we're doing is for non-converters, for video views and page views, we're sending them to a separate advertorial off of GDN. So we're not running it cold, but what we're doing is taking our 30 to 60 or sometimes even 90-day viewers, and then we're retargeting them with this type of ad right across the web, wherever they're at, and we continue to follow them. We set a frequency cap, so we make sure they only see it, say, half a dozen to 10 times a day. But we found that this is an efficient way to use all of that, all those placements on Google Display Network in an efficient way.
So just 90% retargeting traffic.
Well, I would say right now, actually, we're probably more like about 70 because we are running some cold traffic and life insurance. And the way we're doing it is I don't cover it in these slides here, but what we're actually doing is we're targeting high profile placements such as CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, a bunch of Canadian news channels. And we're running a square ad like you're seeing here on these news placements and running to an advertorial. So our goal here was to treat it like a native placement and piggyback on the authority of these larger sites to garner to garner traffic, and it's working. It requires a lot of attention, we'll say, right now, right? Yeah. And testing, right? But it is another effective way. Up until about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, we were pretty much solely using it primarily for retargeting and scooping up, another 8 to 10% of our leads at a really low cost that we weren't getting off of, say, Discovery or YouTube retargeting.
Yeah, makes sense. And you retarget to an advertorial rather than a quiz.
Yes.
That's interesting. We usually do it the other way around. We go from advertorial and they read that and they don't convert, then we send them to the quiz after that. In this particular market, what we found is most of our YouTube traffic, we're doing the selling in the video as to why they would want to take the quiz. So if they got to the quiz and they didn't convert, my assumption is that they didn't know enough yet, right? Yeah. So showing them the quiz again isn't going to get them there. So I want to now explain to them in this instance, like, what is this rebate they can get? How could they qualify? How old does their furnace need to be? How much could they potentially save? What's it going to cost them? And get all that detail out, which I don't have. We're doing in a retargeting YouTube video as well, but we want to hit them everywhere as we can at once. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We're actually setting YouTube traffic to like a 2-minute video to an advertorial as well, and it's converting better than the quiz funnel. Believe it or not. Are you
guys citing that it's an advertorial in the video, or no? You're just sending them off, and that's where it happens to go.
We just decided one day to split test it, and we were like, I think it converted around the same. And we're like, Sweet. Well, this has got to be better than like before. So we just let it set it 100%. So that's interesting. You get a good advertorial does wonders.
No question, almost on any placement, right?
Yep.
So when you're looking at using display network, be it for retargeting or anything, you've got three different styles of ads you can do. You've got image ads, like on that previous slide, we had that ugly one of that 2-level home.
Yeah.
It was ugly on purpose, by the way. I didn't make my 5-year-old son make that. It looks that way for a reason. Then we've got responsive ads, which are on the right here, the lease to own your new furnace. A responsive ad in Google Display is very similar to the discovery ad that you would be setting up. You've got a variety of headlines, descriptions, and images you can put in, and then Google takes that data and molds it to fit everywhere's on the web.
Yeah.
It's good and it's bad. It's good because it's quick, but it's bad because it will blow through a lot of spend. It's been proven time and time again that the medium and large square sizes tend to get the best click-through rate and the best results across the web. So we find starting with an image ad to be the best place to figure out what works. And then once we know what's working, we'll launch responsive in a separate campaign, usually, so that our square image ads still get some spend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're always going to advertorial with this. We want to make sure that we exclude mobile app categories, which is available under placements inside a Google Display campaign. And you want to have good tracking set up on your funnel, because you're going to get lower cost clicks, but you need to know what's happening so you can optimize quick. You don't have to sit on your hands with display for 7 days. You want to be looking at it probably, depending on what you're spending on it, probably after 12 to 24 hours, and looking at how things are working, what ads are working. And if it's an advertorial, are you getting the quiz starts, are you getting the click through to your offer page? Or if it's a quiz, are they starting the quiz? And then making sure you get that fixed up quickly so you don't waste money.
Yep. Cool.
Now, this is just a little hack here I mentioned this already about targeting specific news sites. This is another effective way that you can do it. You can also target your same affinity and stock audiences on there, generally to an advertorial as well. Going right to quiz off display will probably burn a lot of money with very little result in my experience, right? The other thing that you can do is you can use some expansion on your retargeting audiences inside display network to, let me back up here. Have you done anything on display yourself, cold traffic wise, Dan?
Yeah. We have actually. We've actually sent traffic to quiz funnels as well from display.
Okay, and has it worked? Within KPI. Cool.
It's one of those things that you kind of like. It's when things are working on another platform, like on YouTube, for example. Doesn't make sense. Like there's not enough leads to be able to go and try and master another one. Do you know what I mean? So we've always kind of had Google as one of those kind of things, the GDN is one of those things that we want to kind of master, but we haven't had to, because we're getting enough volume from the easier places to get leads, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where we know how to use it for cold traffic as well. But I think that's why we try and hang our hat on the discovery and the YouTube placements, because we're not trying to make it hard for ourselves, right? But one big benefit that you get here on Google Display Network is once your account has 100+ conversions, within a month, Google will often unlock what's called pay for conversions on the display network. So if you have a working funnel, whether it be retargeting or not, on display, then what you're able to do is literally go into your display campaign, set it up, and instead of it being a target cost per acquisition, you're now able to say, okay, pay for conversions. And that's just what it sounds like. You can set a bid to only pay when your funnel converts. And for a really broad offer, this can be a really huge, I hate the phrase game changer, but it really can be, because you can go in there and say, okay, I'm going to pay $40 for every lead I get. And that's only when you'll pay. You can't be greedy. You can't say I'll pay $5, because the same thing will happen. You won't get any delivery. But if you can figure out a happy medium there, it can be that can become an easy way, easier than YouTube in that sense, right?
Yeah. I've seen it in our accounts as well. We've got it going a little bit, but it's cool. You don't really see any click. I think you might see clicks, but you don't really see anything.
No, exactly. You see, the first couple of days we set this up, I literally saw like 3 million impressions, and I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And then I realized, oh wait, there's no spend. They're just trying to find out where it is. And when you go into placements, I actually start to find that there's some weird apps and things like that they're getting conversions on. They found some like app way off in like the left field that 10,000 people use, and it's converting like gangbusters for our offer, which I would never find probably if I was testing manually, right? But they find it and they make it work. So it's kind of a goal that we have in new accounts. So yeah.
Very cool. All right.
And we kind of just talked already about that. So how we're using is we're retargeting previous visitors. We're targeting specific websites, like I mentioned, like high profile news websites or entertainment websites to advertorial. And it just works, you know, when you get your right advertorial funnel and your right hook and copy, you can leverage all the same stuff you're doing on YouTube and Discovery to figure that out too, with what kind of messaging you should use in your ads.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and I'll go through this pretty quickly here. So some people are aware of this, some people aren't, but as long as if you have your own brand or a client brand you're working with and you're running YouTube and Discovery and all these places, you're bound to start having more people go search for that brand. It's a pretty common thing that'll happen. Someone will watch a YouTube video, they're interested, but they want to watch the video they went there for more than click on your ad. So they'll open a new tab, they search the brand, and they're going to come back to it. We find a really great way to scoop up some super simple conversions is to run a branded search campaign. So we'll bid on our actual lead gen brand or our client's brand with a Google search ad. And we get super low CPCs out of this, cost per clicks. And the conversion rate is sky high because they're looking for the brand. And it's just a no brainer. It takes like, you know, a half hour to set up and you really never have to change it. And, you know, we don't see hundreds of leads a month this way, but we'll see sometimes a few dozen, and that can really lower your average cost per lead across the account. It's important here to have a memorable brand if you're running your own lead gen brand, though, not like a generic like Canada Insurance or something, right? that is like a keyword, not a brand.
Yeah, we see that throughout their campaigns. In fact, it's not just a trickle of leads; it's literally 20 leads a day coming through our brand, and that's from Facebook ads too. So you'd be surprised how many people leave Facebook and go and search for something. So don't skimp on the brand campaigns is my advice too.
I agree. And it's absolutely going to be direct. Your results are going to be directly tied to your spend in other placements, right? Because the more traffic, the more views, the more things like that you get, the more you're going to be able to figure out, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how we're using all that stuff. And I know I talk fast, but B, it's a lot of stuff to cover, right? So we've kind of gone through it all. So if anybody's wondering now what do we do with all this? Obviously I've learned the hard way, we had to figure this out super fast because we lost all our Facebook access. So we spent a ton of hours, we spent a ton of money and talked to people like Dan and everybody we could to get up to speed quickly to make this work. But what we've covered here is definitely exactly what we've done, and anyone could take that information and run with it. And I know there are people watching this now that will do that, right? That they'll take this information, they're going to set something up this afternoon. But for anybody who finds that, this isn't enough and they definitely they need a little more information to figure out how that learning curve can go, and they want to skip the spend and skip the confusion. You can jump to the next slide there. We've put this all into training, which took me a long time to organize, way harder than these slides. Like 100+ hours, I got to say, to put it all into a format that worked, right? But basically what we did was, we didn't create a YouTube course because there's lots of that stuff. What I did was I took all the distilled knowledge I've put together and I set up specifically a transition course to go from Facebook into Google. And we've broken everything down step by step, way more than we did here in these slides. And we've created 30+ videos, and I'm creating new videos every day still because I get an idea and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go do that, right? I'm going to put that in there because I learned something new. So, we've got tutorials on how to do it. We've got lots of expansion on what we talked about here. And then we've got real live examples of, our campaigns inside my actual accounts, not like just talking about it. I didn't hide anything. We're in there, right? And then of course I'm giving access to myself in this course as well, so that people can ask me questions directly and figure stuff out, right? On how they can do it, right? And the idea here is to help you get from Facebook over to Google Ads in as little as 48 hours, right? Because that's really how long we did it in. So
I think we forgot to put something in here, which is the price.
No, there's another slide there, Dan, actually, if you jump ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah, there we go. So the reason that I put this together is because, in being part of the Flex group, but also in being part of other different Facebook groups, I've seen the demand for at least my time skyrocketing. I'm doing multiple consulting calls each week, and it's great. We're charging $400 or $500 for an hour or two on Zoom to help people solve their problems, but it's not really scalable for me because I have an agency to run too, right? So like so many people have in the past, I realized that to make this really accessible, the fastest way to do it was to distill it all into a bunch of videos. And like you mentioned at the first start of this here, Dan, this is the first time I put together this training, but I want it to be more accessible to people rather than having to, jump on an hour and only get an hour's worth of my time, right? So we put all this together. It's only available right now. We're doing it here. It's not a public course on marketing or anything like this or training. And we've got a one-time payment of $497. Or I've set it up because I know that's not always accessible for everybody. So we did a 2-month period where it's $297 one pay this month, $297 next month pay, and but you get full access to everything in there, right? So I'm excited about this because I think it's great, right? I'm excited.
I don't want to sound too hypey with this, but $497. I mean, it's just stupidly cheap price.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's the first time you've done this, but I, can hand on heart say that that is an absolute no-brainer. There'll be people that are charging 10 times that, more than 10 times what Ian's just put together for an outdated Facebook course, right? We've all seen them. And I suspect that as you kind of help more and more people, this probably will be reintroduced at a different time for much more money.
I mean,
what do you get?
Exactly.
How does it work?
So it's a full online learning platform similar to the Flexxable course and other that we've done. So we've broken it down into several different verticals. We've kind of got our initial introduction to everything. Then we've got a setup for gathering all your data. So all the things that we kind of covered at the beginning of this, choosing your audiences, Google Analytics, and using all these types of things. And then I spend a lot of time in helping you figure out how to create your first videos quickly and the different tools we're using so you can get over there and launch your campaign quickly. And then we set up some campaigns live in YouTube and on Discovery. We go through the different things to analyze and the statistics and the KPIs to watch for. All these things I'm talking about here, like how do we bid adjust our geolocations? How do we bid adjust devices? When should we bid adjust that? How do we look at ages? All the I'm a very I like statistics, I like numbers, and I like the nuts and bolts of it. So it's not a like broad strokes thing. I've really gone in and focused on it from like A to Z, front to back, to make sure that people are able to get their stuff launched. And like I say, I wanted to make it accessible. I know a lot of people charge a lot of money for their information, but I'm telling you, I had a very, very, very bad few days when we lost access to Facebook, and my wife and kids, everybody can attest to this. And you've seen me in the Flex group talk about this, and to my consulting clients, I've said this, that diversification is key. And I think that, what I'm showing people, I don't have any ninja secrets that aren't out there. You know what I mean? Like you can, and same as you, Dan, like none of us are, it's all out there, right? But the reason to do this, and I'm a big proponent of this, I pay a lot of money for education to other people. I hire coaches, I do all that stuff because it's so worth my money. The time that the money we lose in the time when we're trying to solve it ourselves or seek it out, if we can learn from other people's experiences and jumpstart that, we can save weeks, months, years in some cases. We can save our business in some cases, right? If that's what has to happen. So I agree. I mean, obviously I created the content, so it's easy for me to say it's a no-brainer, but that's why it's priced at this price point. I want it to be accessible for everyone at different levels. And I know we've probably got a variety of people on here that have big agencies, small agencies, and those that are just getting started. And there's no sense.
Lots of people talking on Facebook, I imagine. So I think I don't think there's probably anything else out there like this, to be honest with you. So
I don't think so, no, because most of the YouTube content and creation stuff I've seen, or Google stuff, is definitely, it's a little more high level, and a lot of it is focused on e-com too, right? So
And the other thing I wanted to chuck in there, I guess, is a nice little bonus, and I didn't talk to you about this beforehand, Ian, but for the first 10 people that buy, how I was talking about that advertorial that we're sending traffic to from our YouTube videos that's converting better? I'm going to give you our advertorial template.
Sweet.
Of how that looks for the first 10 people that buy. So, Ian, Make sure you just let me know who the 10 people are, and then you can just send me that list and I'll email them all separately with that template, but that's only for the first 10 people. Okay.
Brilliant. Okay.
And the other thing I'd like to say about Ian is, let's face it, mate, you're a bit of a traffic geek, no offense, but you also have a very good way. You're one of those rare breeds that understands how to explain things at a high level, and clearly, as well as having the background geeky, nerdy stuff that you're probably, quite proud of secretly. So I think that's a really good thing about the way that you teach. And I think a lot of the people on this call will be able to attest to that.
Yeah, and that's definitely the goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a self-proclaimed geek. So there probably was some questions there. I mean, we can come back to this, but if there's a link at that link at the bottom there. So if you just go to ianhenman.com/flex, there's just a page there. There's two options for ordering. You can do the one time or the two pay. And then you'll be directed with instant access right after that, and you can get right into the meat of it. And it's Friday, so I mean, if no one has weekend plans,
that's right.
48 hours, Monday morning, you should have it rolling, right?
Exactly. All right. So there's a Q&A. I'll leave the screen on here so you guys have got that link.
Sure.
I've got to go in 14 minutes. I think we'll
no problem.
I can just let you keep going. You can shut it down from there. But
yeah, okay.
Let's have a look. I'll read out the questions and you answer them. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So hope this is recorded. I missed the first 20 minutes. John, it's recorded. Yep, no worries. Vasco, need to take into account time of year. For example, during summer, you always see there is market trouble. Another GA, so people giving tips, create a segment that's composed on your leads and then compare the in-market and affinity segments to all users versus leads. Your lead segment might be comprised of different interests and affinities. Interesting. All right, I don't know
what's that one.
Is. It's SC. Another GA tip: create a segment that's composed on all your leads. So I take it he's looking at leads.
Yeah, he's in Google Analytics. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Google Analytics has a ton of what you can do with that. I don't claim to be an expert. There are agencies that just will help you optimize GA, right?
Yeah.
So you can do a ton in there. For the average people that I know I speak with, and probably yourself, we're struggling sometimes to get people to set up Google Tag Manager, obviously, right, and just turn it on. Yeah. So I think getting Google Analytics and setting up a goal so that you're setting a goal when someone reaches a thank you page, and then you can kind of look at what audiences are converting. Oh, here I see it here. Another GA, create a segment that's close to your leads and compared in market. Yeah, absolutely, you can do that, right? Yep. Your lead segment might be comprised of different interests and affinities. Yeah, one thing to say about Google Analytics, and you see it, and I've got a video on this in the course, is when they break down the data inside, it's everything subsets of everything. Because if let's say that I'm buying life insurance, but I'm also looking for a new roof, I'm also shopping for a car, plus I'm a vegan, let's say, right? Yep. So if you do I'm part of all these different affinity and in-market audiences that will all show in Google Analytics. So I'm you get more people in different audiences than you actually have conversions, if that makes sense. But what he's suggesting there, yeah, okay, cool.
All right, Patrick saying, what's your definition of all users? Sorry, is this everyone that's seen the ad or those that interact with the ad and don't convert into a lead? I go to the landing page and don't complete the CTA.
Cool. Okay, so
was that viewers or was that people that hit the landing page?
So with viewers, I just do all viewers myself. We actually get a little more ninja with it, and we break our viewers down into 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, and 21, 30, because we find when we're running large volumes of traffic, you can actually have 2 or 3 different retargeting pieces in there. And keep pushing them through, right? So someone 90 days ago doesn't respond immediately necessarily to the quiz again. We need something different, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the landing page views, some of our micro conversions we'll set up, we'll build audiences off of those. So we, depending on the volume, need 1,000 people in an audience to really retarget in Google.
Yeah.
So we'll usually start with landing page views, but we may extend that to maybe people who saw our results opt-in page, or people who started the quiz, or people made it to a certain point, and we'll test all those to see which one seems to convert the best. Because oftentimes just going after the biggest number, like the biggest audience, isn't always the answer. We got to focus on the end result, which is volume of leads and cost per lead. Yeah. So there may be way fewer people in the audience of people who started our quiz, but they may convert at 10x what the landing page viewers do, right? So, we'll look at that.
All right, cool. Someone's asking what TPCA means. I think you answered that. Targets cost per acquisition. Vasco saying, and I think we touched on this, bid adjustments might not work if you use target CPA.
Correct.
And we said that, right? It might disrupt the algorithms or whatever. Looks like we got a Google employee here, and hopefully it's not kind of going back and saying, let's start cracking down on compliance for discovery. But he's saying, I'm interested to know what kind of industry you have success with discovery ads.
I've run discovery for, okay, I'll list off what I can think of in the last 30 to 45 days that we've successfully generated leads for in discovery. Okay. So life insurance, funeral insurance, auto finance, a local HVAC company that sells ductless air conditioners and heat pumps. Who else? An HVAC rental company. I
think solar. We haven't tried solar, but I'm sure that would work.
Solar, yeah, I can't see why it wouldn't. So I think people this is just my opinion, so we'll put it at that. This is the opinions expressed here on my own. People get too caught up in that won't work for this. And I call BS on that. And the reason I say that is because it hasn't worked the way you're trying to do it yet. Yes. That's my opinion, right? So people will say, well, you can't do that with native. I'll be like, okay, are you sure? Like you've tried every possible thing you can think of and it just won't work, There's always a way to get something to work, but do you have the grit, the time, the money, to make it work? And that's not a judgment. That's just a fact. It's like Google Display. You got to have some grit and some time and some money to make that work on the cold audience side. It's not the place to start out of the gate, right? Yeah. But if you can get it to work, the scale is immense, right? Yeah. So I think most things will work on discovery, Dan. Give it enough time. I think local businesses could be using discovery, although that's a totally different topic, but I can't see why a chiropractor or an HVAC company or whatever couldn't be using it. Same thing with YouTube, right? They're all accessible. Yeah. You just got to put the time into it's the offer, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Eric's saying, what's a good starting ad budget? I think we said 10 for YouTube. It's 10 times. That's the official Google guidance, isn't it? 10 times your target CPA.
I think so. That's what some of my reps have told me. And I mean, it needs enough budget. I've found that if you try and set it too low, you basically screw things up. You don't get that consistency like you talked about, Dan. You get a couple of cheap conversions a day, you get none for a couple of days, and you get one expensive one. Then you get 3 really cheap, but it's hard to get the expense or the consistency on it, we'll say. Yeah.
What's a good net we should aim for? What do we get to keep to cover our initial costs of doing business? All right, you're asking about the 50% margin, Eric. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but I'll look at the figures of my agency. I mean, I put all of my staff and all of my costs through my agency, and I think we operate on probably about 30% net profit, if that makes sense. So, probably half of my lead cost goes to, so half of the cost I'm getting paid per lead goes to the ad budget, and another 20% on top of that goes to the cost of running my business, I guess. But I also put all the flexible stuff through that as well. All right, so I've posted the link there. Ash was expecting this to be over $1,000, mate. Ash, exactly.
There is a couple questions here in the Q&A I see, Dan. If you don't mind, I'll hammer through these really quickly. So Brian Weathers, so he says, help us understand how network percentage break down for service type. He has a hard time understanding that this YouTuber discovery works for these businesses versus Google search. Again, I just kind of answered that. It's not that everything works. Google search is obviously the Cadillac or the gold standard in terms of running a lot of service-based leads, but we're limited. We can't make more people search something each day. There's only so many people that will type in, furnace repair wherever you're at, or roofing repair or metal roofing. So in order to expand that, it's the same. Think about direct mail, right? Direct mail works and has for 100 years. It's the same idea. We're putting an indirect advertisement in front of a person who we think will convert. Yeah. I can say this, I didn't mention this in my background, but I co-owned an HVAC company in my region for 2 years, and we grew it very aggressively to a 7-figure business quickly. And we used a lot of indirect advertising to lead magnet to email nurture and long form conversion, right? So I think that's it. Earfan said, how strict is Google's ad approval process in industries like debt and insurance compared to Facebook? It's going to depend on your country. Debt is starting to get a little bit regulated in some countries, due to lobbying by the debt people, whether it's attorneys or in Canada, it's licensed insolvency trustees or things like this. You want to be aware. Insurance, I haven't had an issue with it. It's not, you don't require to have your license or anything like that, to manage that. George Tully, what's TCPA? We answered that. Does testing a new campaign and getting leads come first before getting a paying client? And sort of the lead. So Dan can answer this, but this is, do clients come first or do leads come first, Dan, is basically what they're asking, right?
I know, like the way we do it is I try and get the client to pay for that testing phase. So I wouldn't start running ads. And I get people to do this in my program and each to their own, right? But I don't like, I'm pretty tight with my money. I've worked hard for it. So I try and only risk my own money when, after I've got stuff dialed in, because these clients have, I always say this, these clients have only one offer, right? They have to make what they're doing working. So they need people like us to be able to help grow their business. If they need us more than we need them, which means that they will pay for that privilege. Yeah. And that's the way I do it.
And I can say, as someone who, it's important. Sometimes if you need to run ads to feel confident, and that's how you're going to have to talk to somebody, I get that, right? Because you want to believe you can just deliver on that, but don't get caught up in the thing of you're running it forever. And like Dan said, don't go broke on trying to set it up, or find someone at the very, very least, find a business that's willing to work with you, even if it's at a break-even basis, so you can learn the market from them if that's the need be, right? Yeah. And then you're not going out of pocket, and you're going to have the ear of someone who's working your leads, and you're able to gather so much information. I can't say enough about that. Exactly. Can you have text on these images that you run on Google Discovery or YouTube? Absolutely. Well, on Discovery, you got to be careful about your overlay, your text overlay and your image overlays. They are a little picky. So you can put a tasteful overlay, but not too aggressive. And if you Google Discovery image policies or best practices, there's some stuff you can see there, or inside the course I talk about a little bit. YouTube campaigns, you can pretty much, if you want to overlay it, no problem, right? I would test with and without the overlay, see what works for you, right? For retargeting, would you use Facebook or GDN first? It depends. I mean, for me, I'm going to use GDN because I'm not using Facebook anymore. But like Dan said at the beginning, and he's not the only person to say this, I have found a lot of people say they can't get Facebook to work for retargeting. If you're going to do Facebook, I think you need to go totally different. You need to maybe don't use a different website, because you should only have one website per ad account. But definitely create something totally different advertorial or something like that, so that it definitely brings people back into the fold, right?
Yep. All right. Is that all the Q&A ones?
I think so. That's all. Yeah, that's all that's there. Yep.
All right. I'll continue on with these. Jan, here got a question. When you say from YouTube to survey, are you including the leads hook in a landing straight or straight to pure survey page? Is on desktop. I think that's, are you embedding it, a leads hook or some quiz software on a landing page, or are you direct linking?
I've done both myself. Yeah. On Facebook, I ran successfully right to a leads hook, naked leads hook URL for a long time before Nick over at Leads Hook offered the custom domain functionality. Yeah. Now we're embedding a lot of our pages. We use Onbounce, but we also use Thrive Themes and the Thrive Architect Builder for WordPress. It loads quite quickly, so we'll embed on that. I do it a little bit differently than Dan does for the quiz. I usually aim for a 25% click through off my advertorial to a separate quiz page. And that's just the way we've done it with life insurance and final expense insurance. But embedding has worked all day long. Wouldn't you say, Dan? That's been the way that, the quiz.
Yeah, I think people always worry about how long the quizzes take to load, right? But especially when you're running an advertorial, like the page loads instantly, and then the quiz takes a couple more seconds, and most people haven't even got to that point on the page yet. So I wouldn't be, we've run this for many, many years, right? And we've done pretty well out of it. Could it be better if it was super fast and custom coded and all that? Yeah, maybe, but overall we're doing okay, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Patrick, okay, cool. Do you embed any software? Oh, there we go. On your landing page, the heat maps user activity, yes, we use Hotjar for that. Always hear people going about J, which does a lot on ARM agreements, but there are loads of other tools like Hotjar and others. I don't feel like we get a lot of exposure in this digital space. Do you agree that I ain't talked enough, and do you use any? Yeah, we do, but Patrick, like GA and like Hotjar are completely different animals, right? Google Analytics is more about the, it's in the name, analytics, right? But Hotjar is actually watching what people are doing on the page. And yes, we do both, but not as much as we should on analytics, which is an interesting thing I've picked up from Ian today.
We do both. And I mean, if you get into Google Tag Manager, a little more high level, we'll fire the whole idea of bounce rate. Bounce rate is only based, you'll have 100% bounce rate if no one makes it to the next page, but that doesn't mean they bounced immediately. So time on site isn't measured until you leave the first page to go to the next one, which is kind of a flaw with the Erkin metrics script that they use. So what I would recommend is firing an event timer out of Google Tag Manager into Google Analytics to see how long people are spending on page. We do it in Hotjar. We'll just kind of use the timer, right? It's kind of it's a slack way of doing it, but it works for us, right? To watching the video.
Yeah.
You know?
We have a 10-second pixel at all of our pages, or we fire an event when someone starts the quiz.
Okay, there, and that's what we do as well. We fire an event on the second node to see how it's going. Yeah, agreed.
Yep. Nick Sutton, keep trying Discovery and excited about it, but can't get it working. We have a big demand for leads, but getting nowhere. YouTube working okay, but Discovery is a struggle. Nick, I think you've just joined our course, haven't you? Oh, that's the other thing. Flex members, Ian, you're probably not going to like me when I say this, but all Flexxable members that are in the mastermind get this program for free. So I might have to refund some of you guys, sorry, Ian might have to. But yeah, that's one of the perks of joining our community, is that stuff like that just gets automatically uploaded to our system and our program and portal. So there we go. I tell you what, 1 hour and 47 minutes. Not bad. And I've got to actually get going. But Ian, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've actually learned a lot just from this chat. Again, I'd like to thank you for everything that you've done for us and the Flex members. And thanks for putting this together.
Thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to teach this information to everybody. And I hope everyone who spent there's still quite a few people, actually almost everyone's still hanging out. So it's great.
Yeah.
And I truly hope that people will take action on this stuff. I just want to say this before closing. Anything, if we learn this, take this and do something with it, whether you choose to invest in the information I put together or not, make sure that you do take advantage of it, because I'm not saying that everyone's going to get, if Facebook was successful to me, I'd be using it. Right. But I'm just saying that I would recommend that you diversify and don't just be stuck with the one traffic source. Just act on it. Don't take it in and let it, float away.
Exactly. And remember, people, with the first 10 buyers, we've probably already got 10 buyers, I would say. But the first 10 buyers get the advertorial and the template we use that's working so well for us. I'll send it to you guys. All righty. Good on you guys.
Thank you very much, Dan.
I'm going to love you and leave you. I'll see you all guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.